About 5 years ago, I made a video essay about a game called Y2K, a postmodern RPG, and it's gone on to be probably one of the most important things I've ever made for the internet. Not like culturally, I know I'm not that important, I mean from a personal perspective. This video ended up having a lot of influence on me and helped make way for the kind of person I am today. I've done video reviews prior to this, but this was my first, huge one. At the time, it was probably the most time I ever dedicated to a single online project. Besides maybe my webbook, these days this record has been overtaken by my Minecraft story mode video and even more important to me, my game, Cuban and Gardens Befriend, but this was a huge milestone for me. It was my first time deep diving into a game's story to this degree. It was good practice for media literacy, I feel. I tried tons of new editing techniques and learned a lot about the real process behind making a video like this. I even got to flex something I do consider myself a bit of a professional about with that giant Earthbound-like rant in the middle of the essay. I made mistakes in this video that I have learned from, both minor editing blunders and outright factual errors alike. Got good practice on how to address them as well. It was also when I realized that I kind of love talking about games with notoriously mixed reception. It's easy to say that a plain good game is good or a plain bad game is bad, but when you're not sure entirely, or it's a game that people seem to like but you hate, or it's a game that people seem to hate but you like, putting your thoughts into words on why is kind of a game in and of itself that I find just infinitely fun. Heck, even today I'm seen in a lot of friend circles as the YIIK guy, and I'm weirdly kind of okay with that. I'm either that or the Balin guy. That review jumped around a lot of my communities I'm into, but no one remembers me as the Rudolph guy. Even outside of the internet, this video has affected me. I finished this video about a week before my family moved from my childhood home. I've been living there since I was 1. Y2K was kind of a bookend to a major chapter of my life in that sense. So yeah, Y2K is pretty important to me, and I'm returning to it here today to cover a big update these developers started working on for at least the past 3 years, roughly starting development of it after a lot of reviews and opinions on the game came out, both good and bad, good faith and bad faith. And this is no normal update. It's practically a rework of the entire game. There are new areas, there is new music, like a lot of new music, new enemies, new bosses, reworks of story cutscenes people didn't like, new story entirely, including an entirely brand new B-plot. Lots of underdeveloped characters and areas have been given more time in the spotlight, and there are new characters that add to the story too. The big level-up gimmick I had a lot of problems with has been completely reimagined. The battle system is entirely new. I can't imagine how big of an undertaking that alone must have been. There's even a new postgame chapter that by itself is so substantial that it probably could have been released as its own game, or at least a DLC. And that's another thing that's incredible about this update. It's free if you already own the game. I remember making a joke in my original video about wishing they just fix their game if they're super passionate about it, and they actually did it. In fact, I'd even consider that a big theme of this update. It's clear they took a lot of good faith criticism to heart and turned an ambitious yet heavily flawed game into the best it possibly could ever be. And I have so much respect for that. This video is going to cover a lot of these changes. I'm not aiming for it to be nearly as in-depth as my original video, although I will be talking about spoilers pretty indiscriminately. And I'll also be writing this under the impression that you've at least seen my original video at some point. If you haven't, tough luck. You're gonna have some trouble following along, but I hope you enjoy it regardless. Well, here we go. Welcome to part 4 of my Y2K, a postmodern RPG video essay. The name of this update is a little silly to me, actually. Silly in a fun kind of way, though. I've been told it's pronounced Y2K, the IV update. It's not like 1.5 like I originally thought. So, let me get this straight. The 2 I's you say like a number, and then the Roman numeral 5 you say like an actual 5. It's still easier to wrap your head around than 358 days over 2, though. That's what we call a callback. So I think a good place to start would be with the big new B-plot, because it's actually how the game starts proper now. Between/before chapters, you'll find yourself playing as this new character referred to as the Nameless Child, and she's interchangeably used as a stand-in for both Alex's sister and Rory's sister, almost like she's an actor. More on that later. These segments tend to be even more weird and abstract than the main game, if you can believe that, and are typically about an hour long. There's no combat to any of these. Well, traditional RPG combat, that is, and they tend to play more like adventure games, where you need to find these concepts, items, in the form of these cards that either grant you access to, or allow you to exchange them to other characters. These segments range from being, if I'm going to be honest, a couple of them I did find kind of boring, although I didn't really have a negative time with any of them. On the other end of that spectrum, some of them are kind of mind-blowing for what they're trying to do. My favorite was this one that played like a really old-school survival horror game, where you have to escape from this weird balloon Alex within his own house. It was absolutely absurd, and I had so much fun with it that it actually got me kind of curious to maybe dive deeper into this genre someday. This is making me get the appeal of, like, old school horror. I don't know, like, the micromanaging movement, like, the resource management, it's kind of, like, I feel like a little Wii Play Tank. Let me tell you, if this time next year y'all are finding me exploring the survival horror genre, you can thank Y2K. A concern I had with these sections originally is I feared that just inserting a new B-plot where there wasn't one originally could be really bad for the game's pacing, and subtract from the overall story by taking the attention away from it. But I don't really think that's what ended up happening here. I wouldn't call these segments natural, per se. It's a little unsettled and easy to tell what's new when you see it, but they were fun intermissions that did a good job of implanting new information that just kind of made me go, where the heck are you going with this game?
I'm neither Carrie nor Allison.
You are not. Your name is...
What? Another major character you learn about through these segments, and even a few new scenes with the more traditional cast, is Kasage X, a pretentious film director with a master plan that goes way over my head. He's accompanied by Asuke, an actress who often works with him. There's also Crow, not Marlene the Crow, that's spelled with a C, this guy is spelled with a K. He's kind of all over the place. He appears in the B-plot, he appears in the base content now, he's even an arbiter and temporary party member in the heavily revamped Mine Dungeon. Let's put a pin in the story for now and talk about what's changed with this big mechanic. In Y2K, you gain experience from enemies like a normal RPG, but instead of it accumulating and making your numbers go up when you get enough of it, you instead stockpile it and then bring it into this little pocket dimension called the Mine Dungeon, where you'd cash in this experience for your level ups. This, to me, was the epitome of a cool idea executed really poorly. Mainly, I just found the system really slow, confusing, and even pretty pointless by the end of the game. Fidgeting around with these doors to min-max your stats and make the perfect Alex like the game clearly wanted you to took so long, and that's if you could even figure out how it worked. The UI here is really poorly designed in my opinion. These stat modifiers only apply to Alex too, and just doing this much work for a single character in a game where stats don't really matter that much in the end. It's not like Y2K is a particularly difficult game or anything. Especially when bugged abilities like LP Toss exist too when it comes to damage. It just felt like a big waste of time for everyone. Now how it works is you just spawn in and you can talk to Crow right on the starting platform. He gives you 3 of these cards to choose from, each corresponding to a type of build that you can do with Alex, and that's basically it as far as your stats are concerned. Honestly, the UI is still pretty confusing here, but there's so much less going on that it's easy to wrap your head around how it works in just a few trips to this place. I love this compromise to this system because it still allows you to go hard in with a certain stat or playstyle if you choose to do so, but if you're just impatient or impartial, you can always just alternate between the cards for a pretty balanced Alex in its own right. Although, that's not all that's here now. If you leave the platform, you then have this entire platforming area. The gameplay completely changes here. You can control the camera, you run a bit faster, there's a jump button. Say, what is it with me in games where you can only jump some of the time? They had a whole platforming segment here that plays so differently from the main game that it actually kind of makes me wonder if this is secretly some kind of tech demo for a future project these devs want to work on. I don't know. You're meant to periodically explore this place as you make your way throughout the game. You can find these embryo creatures that you can exchange for Karta keys, which can be used to unlock new Karta. You can also level up your Karta here too. I'll explain what Karta is in a minute, don't worry. This world is also where you find new abilities for your party members now too, as you can use your puzzle tools to solve minor puzzles to unlock them. And oh, there's more skills across the entire cast now too. That was an issue I had with the original game, actually. Some characters barely had any abilities that made them unique, and while Alex still, by and large, has the most skills of any character, I do wish they kind of just spread out his moveset a little bit more. The total number has at least been a bit democratized across the entire cast. The aesthetic of this new mine dungeon gives me, like, VR chat world vibes. Like, seriously, I half expect to find a mirror in here somewhere. There's so much random stuff everywhere, yet it still manages to feel cohesive and comprehensive. There's a lot of nice set pieces too, so you basically never get lost for how big it is. It's a great addition to the game. Now for Karta, which ties directly into talking about the brand new battle system as well. They're basically cards, and they're a new equipable that every character can equip 3 of, and the order you equip them does matter. You can equip one in the front, the middle, and the back. That'll make sense in a minute. On their own, they change your stats, like any other equipment, but where they really shine is once you're in battle. Okay, so in classic Y2K fashion, the battle system is unlike anything I've ever played, and it took me the longest time to fully understand and decide on if I really like it or not. So let's run through how this works. When you start a battle, you'll have access to all 3 of your characters as Karta. These can be used almost like an item, and each one has a different effect. Using the card consumes it, however, and causes you to lose the stats you gain from having it equipped too. You do get it back at the end of battle, however, so don't worry about losing them. They kind of remind me of the Jinn from Golden Sun in that sense, but there's still more to this system. Additionally, each of your cards have their own health value. When an enemy attacks you, it doesn't deal damage to you, but instead your Karta. When a Karta takes too much damage, it'll be destroyed. In the order they're attacked, destroyed, and then attacked again is the order you equip them to your character. That's what the front, middle, and back is. If you get hit at all once all your Karta is destroyed, you will start to take normal health damage, and you will also begin to bleed. A permanent damage over time status effect that lasts until either you die or the battle ends. For good measure, all of this applies to your enemies too, as they also get their own 3 Kartas. And that's the basics of it. Okay, this is a huge improvement. I remember my biggest issue with the original battle system specifically is that it was slow and didn't really have a lot of mechanics that made it deep, engaging, or interesting. It didn't help that most enemies had way too much health too, so these fights even became pretty boring at that. This Karta system is snappier, it's more strategic, and it's more engaging. This is also one of those rare battle systems where you can theoretically go through great stretches of the game without taking any damage if you know what you're doing, which is just always really cool, honestly. Some Karta is better ordered first, and vice versa, as you might want to have their stat boosts or abilities earlier in the fight, not minding if they get destroyed first too, while others are better consumed later. You need to weigh risk and reward before you even begin battle. For example, there's a few Karta that give you more money or more experience if they're intact after battle, so you might want to equip them last, but they also have some pretty poor stat yields, so you might not mind losing them first. It feels like every Karta has at least one viable use to be positioned earlier or later, which gives you a lot of potential to strategize. A common question I got from friends as I was working my way through this game again was, is YIIK good now? Truthfully, I don't think that's the most productive question. I mean, I'd argue it was never a bad game, just heavily jank and heavily not for everyone, but I get what people mean when they ask this. The better question I found to ask back is, what issues did you have with the game originally? If it's the battle system, then absolutely yes, I've praised that enough already, but other common responses I got were its story and how it handled certain subject matter. It isn't really one single thing they did that quote-unquote fixed YIIK, but instead tons of new changes that play into each other, strengthen each other up, and just make the experience more in line with what they probably want the player to feel in the first place. Like, say for example, the cutscene presentation. In the original game, countless cutscenes had this style where the characters would stand around while these two third illustrations pop up in and do the talking. I actually kind of loved these back in the day. They're expressive, they're well drawn, they capture the body language of the characters exceptionally well. These styles of illustrations is actually a topic I'd love to make a whole video about someday, actually, because there's something I've grown to really appreciate in other games, and I've even used them a lot in my own games too. Although in I.V, they're phased out a lot in favor of fully animated cutscenes with the in-game models. They look great, honestly, and enhance a lot of the story moments that were easy to not get fully invested in for one reason or another. For example, when it comes to Alex's monologuing, he still interjects and talks to himself during cutscenes all the time, although instead of him just staring at you for minutes at a time to a magnitude that people started making memes about it, the game now does this.
Don't remind me.
I had known her for less than 2 hours when she vanished from my sight. Sammy was gone for good, swept away as if she'd never been there at all.
We get transported into this stand-up club where Alex verbatim talks about his real-time feelings on any given situation. These are way more dynamic. A lot of canned animations are used for Alex in these sections in creative ways, along with the camera work, to make no two of them feel quite the same. It also helps with the pacing too, whereas before it felt like Alex was just bringing the cutscene to a screeching halt to monologue. Now it's more like he's talking about the game's events in hindsight. This approach even has a satisfying payoff at the end of the game. Remember during one of the last cutscenes of the game where Alex is talking to you through a TV before joining your party. Now it's revealed that all of this monologuing was in service to the player. Also, you gotta love how they turned the PS3 into a PS4 here, that made me laugh. Looking back on old footage, this might have been what they were going for in the old version too. But if it was pretty poorly communicated. What an amazing decision to approach it this way, though.
I understand that in your reality, you interface with the soul space via a gaming device. Man, wish I had one of those. That would have made my life so much easier.
Oh! Whoa! What the?
It is real!
That jump scared me! What's up? Countless other cutscenes in general get this treatment, and it benefits them just as greatly too. Scenes that were originally serviceable, albeit pretty lifeless and boring depending on their length, are now opportunities for the game to take a lot more of a dynamic approach. They show more character, they pan or zoom to interesting details. It's kind of surreal to play an old cutscene next to an updated one. It's like they're from completely different games. There is one issue I have with all of this though, and that's, well, there's still plenty of cutscenes that remained entirely unchanged too, which I just find kind of weird. I don't know, I just couldn't help but wonder why they couldn't have touched up all of them if they were putting so much effort into this anyway. It kind of diminishes the impact of a lot of the unchanged cutscenes, like they're less important now, which kind of sucks because there were a lot of really good humanizing moments in these scenes too. And what they did decide to change versus leave unchanged is kind of odd sometimes as well. Like what, the scene where Claudio and Chandra are venting about their missing, presumably dead brother, which also taught me what missing white woman syndrome was years before I knew it was an actual term. But that has less narrative importance than the scene where Alex uncomfortably tries to kiss Rory. Why did that scene of all scenes get the premium treatment, actually? There's even oddities like how they didn't fix how a few illustrations have off pixels around their face. Like, come on, man, that's a mistake I'd make. Or how there are no new illustrations for any of the newer characters. Like, I don't know, if they were keeping these artworks around, then I would have loved to see characters like Crow or Nameless Child in this art style. It's not a big deal, I guess, but it is something I noticed more and more the farther I got into the game. I think the worst part of the game by these metrics is the mall. They basically made no changes to this place when I already found it a pretty underwhelming part of the game. Pretty much the only change they made was they changed the chase music into a more calm theme for some reason. It really doesn't fit what's going on when you go here for the first time. Hell, they even kept that uncomfortable racism joke I didn't like. Though, as soon as you're finished with it, it's like night and day that we're in the new Y2K design again. On the other end of that spectrum, I'd like to go step by step through the point in the game that's probably gotten the best facelift, all things considered. The first visit to Wind Town. The basics of the plot is entirely the same. You begin by looking for Rory in this trailer park town, and you do this by talking to, mostly fighting the locals. These encounters were pretty uninspired in the original game, but now have been remixed to either have them bring some kind of twist to their fight, or provide a visual gag in their Karta. Like the future robber kid starting with the noble thief Karta, or the alcoholic guy having 3 wines. I feel bad that I laughed at that one. That's some good dark comedy right there. At this point in the game, you're still pretty new to this battle system, but the game is starting to take the training wheels off. Divvying out enemy Karta in this joking manner is a creative way to make no two enemies here the same, to give them some unique movesets while keeping them easy and non-serious enough. You meet Rory, and his introduction cutscene is heavily updated. Then descend into the second major dungeon of the game, the Windtown Sewers. The layout of the dungeon itself is mostly unchanged. The biggest difference probably being that there's no longer any of those Moai statues since the haircut is now introduced later. In hindsight, it was really weird how they introduced both this and the amp in basically the same area, so I feel like this is a pretty good change. I'd say the biggest difference here is the enemies. There are multiple new enemies now, including a... Sonic! What? What? All of these, as well as returning monsters, are now much more fun to fight. A big flaw the original game had is that enemies never felt like they really had gimmicks or interesting mechanics that made them stand out for one way or another. The Karta system almost entirely fixes this by itself, as different enemies have different Karta configurations that instantly make them more dynamic. It designates some monsters as priority enemies. Heck, they'll even occasionally give some enemies no Karta at all to balance them having an obscenely high regular stat. It's interesting stuff. Dude, this battle system fucking rules, dude. I think at this point we should talk about Rory too. How he works in battle is now very different. Previously, I praised this character for playing unlike anything I've ever used in an RPG, albeit he did also have a lot of issues, mostly because this playstyle he had just didn't fit Y2K as a game. His whole deal was pacifism. He couldn't deal damage to enemies, instead his moves focused on taking damage in place of other characters, or messing with enemies in miscellaneous ways. Like, that's cool. A very, very unique take on a Guardian or Saboteur character. In the right RPG, something like this would be really fun to play around with. The reason this didn't work here, though, is because often his gimmicks just serve to prolong battles in a game where battles already lasted way too long. So basically how they fixed him here is they gave him a few more support and hindering abilities and replaced his cover attack with a counter. You select an enemy, and if that monster attacks Rory, they're dealt with a heavy reprisal. This was more fun than I thought it would be, honestly. I saw a red flag when I realized that he still didn't have a taunt move of any kind. Although with only 3 party members now, Rory is targeted plenty enough, so you can still get a lot of mileage out of this ability. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that too, but a huge change is that your active party is now 3 characters instead of 4. This may sound like a downgrade, but there's just so much more stuff going on in battles now that it's a change I never found myself missing. A very rare example of less party members serving to make combat more dynamic. 4 characters at once would have probably been way too overwhelming. And then there's the Golden Alpaca scene. I once cited this as the worst scene in the game, a confusing, tone-deaf series of events that encapsulated nearly every issue I had with Y2K condensed into a few short minutes. It's difficult to follow what's going on. It's a bit of a heavy lore dump. It brings up dark subject matter and then completely ruins it by tying it to a boss that, albeit fun, has a sharp tone shift that ruins any severity the scene had. It gives you bad information you will likely act on. It breaks all three aspects of what makes an Earthbound-like all at once. Their response to people's reaction is to recreate this scene from the ground up to what amounts to probably the single most changed cutscene in the entire game. It's kind of inspiring how much of an improvement this is, honestly. I was speechless when I first watched this. It portrays the same information regarding Rory's soul survivor and how it all works, but with a presentation that makes it more engaging and easier to follow. The alpaca himself has been redesigned too, and I love this new look for him. It hits this perfect middle ground to me of feeling goofy enough that it fits right in with the general weirdness I come to expect of Y2K, but not goofy to a degree that he feels almost like a meme boss, like the original did. Despite the over-the-top design, he's presented as a threat and pulls that role off pretty well. It helps that he's more of a character now too. He actually appears a lot throughout the game now, though that does go outside the scope of this section. My only criticism with this new version of this scene is that when you eventually do fight him, I feel his boss fight lacks some visual clarity cues the original did. The general gimmick of the Golden Alpaca is summoning soul survivors that must be dispatched quickly, or else he will absorb them and become stronger. In the original fight, this is interpreted as the alpaca literally contorting and becoming more monstrous. Now what happens is he just gets these glowing circling balls around him that I honestly didn't even notice at first. I can see this gimmick being tough on new players, if only because it's not exactly clear what these represent. As a trade-off though, there's actually more ways among your party to banish soul survivors now, so that's pretty cool. The final bit of this dungeon is this weird and abstract section. If I can be honest, I still have no clue what this is meant to represent, but it's noticeably more varied and interesting of an area now here. I appreciate that they removed that room that I fear could trigger some photosensitivity issues in some players. Oh yeah, on a side note, every epileptic issue I was having with the game that I mentioned has been addressed. For example, when you walk over damaged floors now, it no longer flashes the entire screen bright neon colors, but instead just Alex himself. Perfect compromise. After all this, we have that familiar scene where Alex tells Rory that no one cares about his dead sister, and... okay, I gotta say, this scene hits differently now. This here is a really good example of it not being any one thing that quote-unquote fixed YIIK. What the developers are going for, and have always gone for with this line, is that Alex is so full of himself that he can't have the empathy to keep to himself about a new friend who, while did just do something reckless himself, is clearly going through emotional trauma and needs a moment. There have been a lot of issues with the game up to this point in the original, so a line like this out of nowhere came off at the time as almost yet another flaw with the game. Like, wow, on top of the annoying enemy encounters and this botched alpaca scene, you now have terribly written characters too. But with the game being more competent in general now, a line this egregiously unlikable is more obviously meant to showcase how terrible Alex is. Hell, this scene itself, I believe, is even unchanged. It's just elevated that much by the rest of the game being better. It's incredible. Let's talk about the post-game chapter. It's only fair that I go in depth with the plot of this, considering I did the same with the base game several years ago. Though it is a wild ride. If the plot of the base game is a descent into madness, then this is a journey into enlightenment? It's hard to describe, but I actually did feel like something deep within me changed permanently after completing this. It's unlike anything I've ever played in my life within a game that was already unlike anything I've ever played in my life. People have described this to me as YIIK containing its own sequel, if that gets the idea in your head of what we're about to get into. Well, for starters, I guess I do have one negative with this thing, and it's specifically how you access it. After completing the final boss, you get a scene where Kasage X asks,
"So, what do you think? Are you him in a parallel reality?"
And the first time I got here, I didn't know what to make of it and said yes. I really didn't give it much thought. Turns out, picking no here is what actually unlocks the postgame chapter, and picking the wrong option makes it so you have to play the final boss sequence over again to fix your mistake. I actually had to be told about this after the fact too. Like, think about that. Just by dumb luck and not thinking a question this late would have too much significance, I would have never been able to play probably one of the best parts of the game. That kind of frustrates me. Also, I dislike how within the game, they call the post-game chapter New Game Plus. This name makes story sense, but I still find it confusing to actually explain to people. New Game Plus traditionally means you can replay the game again, carrying over stuff from your original playthrough. That is not what this is. Y2K does have a New Game Plus, but instead they call it the New Game Plus Plus. That's really dumb too. New Game Plus here, though, is a completely original canon story. Like, I just think this is needlessly dumb and confusing to refer to it like this, hence why I've only been calling it the post-game chapter in this video, because that's honestly what it is at the end of the day. But yeah, that confusion aside, our story begins in an entirely new land, where we see Crow beckoning over the blackened pond, before falling in front of a chapel. Enter Cyril. Cyril? I think you say it something like that. A new character, an acolyte accompanied by two gull-wing-looking fairies, who's been given a warning by her master that the Omniscient Man is coming. These two meet and then go around on an adventure around this new world, helping the locals and discussing general world-building talk. I'm gonna be honest, this is not going to be a good analysis of this section of the game. The story in this pseudo-sequel is a lot more symbolic and abstract and esoteric, and the entire time I was playing, I got this general feeling that it was just going over my head. It's really well written for what it is. I'm just not good enough at media analysis these days to decipher it all. I'm mostly going off of just vibes here. This whole first segment does do a really good job of establishing the world, though, even for as much as it has to establish. It's an old town of a lot of farms, acolytes, and interesting landmarks. It has its own monsters and problems. It even has its own religion. Hey Delta, see if you can catch all this. Ready? Alright, let's go.
Uh-oh.
Speedrun.
Too fast. That's too
Religion
fast.
speedrun.
Religion speedrun!
You can't speedrun a religion.
It really does feel like its own completely original game, besides the battle system being identical and some occasional familiar faces. Look, there's even a fishing minigame, so you know it's a real RPG now. Eventually we get to a volcano and find a coffin containing a soul survivor. And Cyril turns into Proto-Woman. After this, we're playing as Nameless Child again. Wait, this is the starting area of the entire base game. Wait, we're actually doing battles as her now too. We also get introduced to Asuka. I can't describe her any better than she describes herself.
I'm Futatani Asuka, a professional actress from Japan. Kisake X has cast me as both the angel and your special friend.
This is the moment where something about this whole post-game started to feel really weird to me. And I mean that in a good way. An original story shattered by returning to something familiar, all while meeting a new character describing themselves as an actor. There's something big going on here. At this point is when it becomes clear what the deal with this part of the game is going to be. The majority of this post-game involves you swapping between Cyril accompanied by Crow and Nameless Child accompanied by Asuka. Cyril's segments take place in this new town, while Nameless's takes you through some of her original segments she had over again. Although, to keep them fresh, they're heavily remixed, and derive further and further away from their source material the farther you get into this chapter. I believe this to be part of the artistic vision, and I'll explain why later.
The web became man and dwells among us. Conceived by upvotes and retweets.
What the f- If you want an idea of what to expect from these, here's my favorite example. That survival horror segment that I love so much is now a sitcom, where we get to see baby Alex and learn a bit about his dad. I'm sorry! Also, I gotta say, I theorized back in my original video that he'd be kind of a lighthearted goofball, but apparently I was very wrong about that. He's kind of a bad father. I am a bit disappointed by this, honestly. I mean, Dick Dad is kind of a cliche, but it does make more story sense. Him and your mom really do not get along in general.
He can't share? Jesus, Avril, you baby him. He's gonna be a bigger fucking freak than he already is.
Don't talk about him like that! He's twice the man you are!
Cyril's story has her going after several bosses while uncovering the mystery of the Blackened Pond. I think. Again, this kind of goes over my head. If I can be real, I had a bit of a hard time taking this seriously too, due to them using the word meme all the time.
Many minds are made one through a fixation on a single meme.
What about the meme of a person?
A person
Does any of this mean?
Oh gosh, it is.
Why are they using this word so flippantly? The meme at outset was the cell.
This is the first meme of Honors a Man.
To embody and engage with memes.
The meme of the king.
Cast away cancerous memes.
Turning into a vehicle for the meme's propagation in just the way that a virus may parasite the genetic mechanism of a host cell. What? They never mention or reference any actual memes. Like, you're not going to see a big delted rune Chungus crazy Friday Night Funkin' hamburger or a skibbity Shrek Among Us garden anywhere or anything. What the heck did I just say? They use this term in a very old language kind of way, if that makes sense. Like, to describe something as memetic. And how said things are important to Omnium-Man. At least I think. This keyword is basically impossible to do research about too, because every time I look up YIIK meme, this sort of stuff comes up. Again, we're going more off vibes in this analysis. The final stretch of this chapter is surreal. You're Nameless Child again, but with blonde hair and wings this time, and you scale Mount Omnium, which, am I crazy, but does this look a bit like the Rogue Legacy Tower? You know how tons of RPGs end with some big abstract area where so little makes sense at face value and the battles are mostly window dressing at that point? Well, this game has been feeling that way since the end game of the base game, but this is a segment that feels like that recursively within itself.
I would ask if I've missed anything particular.
Don't ask what's going on, because I don't know either.
This is comprehensible.
So much happens here. I know it's all plot important, but I can't make heads or tails anymore. The music is creepy and ominous. They're still introducing new characters. You'll find these notes everywhere written by a very angry man that I assume is Hogarth. This part here is weirdly inspiring. Like, this has to be what dying and slowly drifting into the afterlife feels like. I bet you even hear the same music too. I kind of want to draw Stress Kid in this situation, actually. This feels very in character for him. Now that I think about it, Nameless Child actually reminds me a lot of Stress Kid. The golden alpaca is nailed to the wall. We find digital homicide. Oh no. Alex becomes a regular enemy.
Ooh.
Huh?
What, football helmets?
No, what? That's the first thing you notice? Why do they all have wine? Kasage X is in a cage. Actually, after we free him, he starts assigning us roles as specific characters. We have a scene tossing baseballs of Rory. We have a scene of Chandra refusing to accept you as her lost brother. And then we play as Sammy and encounter Hogarth among a room of brainwashed Alexes. Am I still calling him Hogarth for the sake of the running joke? Screw it, we're already too late in. Actually, I haven't even mentioned Hogarth's new role in the story. From the beginning, he was always the one to have created Omnium 1999, the website Alex and friends theorize about urban legends and connect over. But here in I.V, this cute detail was turned into a whole ulterior motive. Hogarth is legitimately kind of creepy in the new game. There's something deeply, troublingly off about everything from how characters regard him, to his off-putting intermission cutscenes, to his entirely new gun mechanic. Huh? He gets this comeback mechanic in battle, where if he's the last party member standing, he'll pull out a gun that does insane damage to everything. It can even kill soul survivors. It was probably the first thing I encountered that made me feel that 1.V was going to be much more than just a general fix-up of an update. Here, he's the only character in the entire game to pronounce Y2K as YIIK. This whole scene doesn't feel real. This guy gives me like Nagito vibes, and how much he seemingly hides his real motives, and how creepy he gets the more you learn about him. At points I genuinely don't know if he's even staying within the fourth wall or not.
Parallel lives exist within the reality of YIIK, but not within the reality of the player.
Is YIIK referring to the game itself? He gives you a gun and tells you to kill Omniscient Man. There he is, right above the hub of this area. But he's too strong. He stabs us through the chest, killing us instead. His face flashes between multiple people before...
Cut!
Huh?
The film is done. That's the final shot.
Asuka, it was an honor working with you.
Crow, you did a wonderful job. I think this will be your breakout role.
And now for the biggest twist of them all. The events of this post-game chapter has been a work-in-progress movie the whole time, directed by Kasage X, including many of our familiar friends, including Asuka, playing the characters. We attend a rap party at Cape Juno, which, fun fact, is a scrapped area we haven't seen since the PAX 2018 demo. That's cool to see it back. This place provides some wonderful falling action. The dialogue is cute and campy, oddly genuine. If you talk to the actor who played Baby Alex, you also get probably my favorite joke in I.V.
Where the hell is my agent?
You sound so... American.
As we leave the party, Crow gives us a stolen prop sword, and with this and a VHS of our new film in hand, we're given one final task. Give this film to William. Who is William? I'm gonna be honest, this character confuses me a lot. He looks identical to Proto-Alex, you know, the most evil Alex who was ever Alex in the history of all Alexes, but is apparently a completely different character and also his symbolic son, whatever that means. God, this part, again, goes over my head. Anyway, we attend his birthday party and give him the VHS, which opens with this brutal scene of your friend smashing the Essentia 2000. This causes William to start crying and, do that. We ascend with him and watch him turn into the Omniscient Man. With the help of the characters Asuka played, and even a fourth party member in Sammy if you bring the right Karta, you fight. This is a tense battle, by the way. I was down to one party member and basically no healing items when I won. I did it. Oh my god. That came down to the wire. We slay Omniscient Man and sever the binds of our friends. Bye! Oh my god! And with a final flourish, we dive deep and meet Alex. Completely altered, completely barbaric, and chained to two pillars. And in one final twist, Hogarth is here too, armed with a gun and ready to kill Alex.
This guy has ruined my life. In every reality.
We're given one final question, which I think kind of broke me a little bit. What? I don't know. Hogarth breaks down and we comfort him, freeing him of his binds before cutting Alex free and sending him away as well. Atop Mount Omniscient and ending Y2K2, Benevolent Psychosis.
Are you alright? It's been a week.
Dude, you need to see these memes, they're way too strong. And I think that's going to be it for now. So, kind of like the video I made 5 years ago, the length of this got a little longer than I expected it to be, so I'm actually going to split it into multiple parts. 2 parts in this case. Next time we'll be discussing what I feel the story of this game means, of this like post-game chapter means, as well as like a ton of like loose ends and miscellaneous stuff that I want to discuss. Fun stuff, and that video will be uploaded next week. In the meantime, thank you to my Patreon supporters, Royalblot, Trevor, Sean, Isaac, Firestriker, Great Wolf, and Jacob Lawson. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you folks later.